do.
Yeah.
I mean, even if today they've sort of forgotten, but there was a reason for what they started.
So, and her rationale behind it with being one with ancestors and it making you healthy made sense to me. Uh, if it made sense to her why they did it for generations behind generations, it made sense to me. So, uh, like you say, like you know, you and George are saying, we accept people where they are, and our upbringing, our Western background, and beliefs and values uh, does make us a bit judgmental at times. Okay. I had looked at something from today, and Pastor may not join us. I'll tell you that up front. Uh, but I had looked at something for today, but I got to thinking about this. And well, you know, before I go there, any questions about anything? Anybody have any questions or comments uh, before I go into last week? Okay. What got me last week is Pastor and S shared dreams and or visions. I don't know uh, how you want to look at it, because sometimes the things that I call dreams, I'm half awake. I'm not totally asleep when I have them. So, uh, but I thought that was interesting. I love the way we opened it up and looked at it, both of them, what they meant. The thing I looked at when I looked at, I think it was in Joel, where it talks about your old man men would dream dreams and your young men would see visions. I thought that was interesting. Dreams at that point uh means to recover something, and visions means to see or behold, to look at, to gaze, and the behold means something will be revealed to you. Dreams of vision. The reason why I thought that was important is and Pastor shared with us, but I think, well, I'm pretty sure anyway that they're not the only ones that have dreams that, and I think Audrey may have shared too, dreams of family members, especially parents, uh, and we may not always know what they mean. Uh, so I just wanted to make sure to revisit that, to make sure that we were done. Anybody have any thoughts or questions on that, or something else that you wanted to share with us about it before we move on? Didn't want to move on too fast from that. Okay. All right. Look at with me, if you will. There's something I want to talk about, but I don't want to do it until Pastor is here, because it may take us out of left field, and I don't know how to get us back from the left field. So let's look at 2 Kings chapter 20 for a minute. This is something else that kind of hit me. 2 Kings chapter 20. And I'll get there and tell you what verses. Are we there? Okay. I'm gonna start at verse 1. Uh yeah. 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 1. It says, in those days Hezekiah became mortally ill, and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, came to him and said to him, thus said the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. Then he turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord, saying, remember now, O Lord, I beseech you, how I have walked before you in truth, with the whole heart and have done what is good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Before Isaiah had gone out of the middle court, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, return and say to Hezekiah, the leader of my people, thus said the Lord, the God of your father David, I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. Behold, I will heal you. On the third day, you shall go up to the house of the Lord. I will add 15 years to your life, and I will deliver you in this city from the hands of the king of Assyria. And I will defend this city for my own sake and for my servant David's sake. Then Isaiah said, take a cake of figs. And they took that and laid it on the boards, and he recovered. There's a lot in that. The thing that jumped at me though was the time, the 15 years of time. I could not find anything adequate about the 15 years, but I did find something on the 5 years. And we'll get to that in a minute. The thing that made me look at it though was the usage of time and what we do with time. There was someone that I know who was I don't know if she was really talking to me or just kind of venting, but what she was saying was, I seem to have everything. I have a loving spouse. I have a loving husband. We have everything we want. We have a nice home. He has a good job. My children are healthy. My children are happy, but I'm not happy. I seem to be drowning. I seem to be everywhere I turn, there's something to do. There's something to do to be mom. There's something to do to be wife. There's something always that the house is expecting of me. I come to work and there is no refuge. There's nowhere to hide. Everything pulls me in a different place, and I don't have time to just sit back and relax. I can't inhale. I can't just take a moment, except when I go to bed. She said, when I go to bed at night, my mind is constantly racing. In the morning, don't forget to do this. You got to do that. Don't forget this kid needs this. You got to do this, or your husband asks you to do that. She says always something, and she wakes up and it's still going on in her mind. And she was saying, I need more time. What do I do with this? I need more time. Everybody else seemed to be happy running around, and we're good at you know, you have your groups of people that we share things with, but we don't share with everybody, and everything does look rosy from the outside. And I sat there and I listened to it, and I went back and thought about my life. Life is sort of like an empty closet. You know, I had a house one time. I had a pretty nice size house for a single person, and for whatever reason, I didn't realize how full it was until I left the house. And now I'm in an apartment, and I'm constantly packing up boxes and bags of stuff to get out of here because it's overcrowded me. It's overwhelmed me. And we seem to think, just using this as a metaphor, if we have a big closet, that big closet has to be full of something. And in her life, that something was life, and it had overtaken her. And all these events, all these things, to all of us at some point are important, but how do we prioritize them and keep ourselves in that priority? So that was what I'm looking at. And only the thing I found kind of close to this is this thing with Hezekiah. If Hezekiah is not ill, if he is not dying, what causes this thing to happen, that that God addresses the Assyrians? What had he mentioned this before to the Lord, that they were being pressed in by the Assyrians, or was that something totally that came up due to his illness? So this kind of got my attention about setting our priorities, what they are, and what is the purpose of time. What do we do with this thing called time? Any questions or comments about any of this? And for anyone who just got on, I was reading from 2 Kings chapter 21-7. And looking at Hezekiah asking, or God telling Hezekiah, I'm going to give you 15 more years. As I mentioned to you, I did not find a whole lot on 15. The word chamis is the Hebrew word for 5, and it means power, strength. It means alertness, to be awakened. It is the anointing, prayer, and protection. That's what I found on 5. So you have 3 5s there. And I did not. Also, I'm looking at hey is the 5th letter as well in the Hebrew alphabet, but I did not see anything there that I thought was really relevant about 15. But some of you may have, if you have some information. But the thing I wanted to focus on was time. Yes, sir.
One is Elohim, right? Elohim.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Now read 5 again.
5 is power, strength, alertness, to be awakened. It is grace, prayer, and protection.
So the Creator is giving Hezekiah time to alert himself to the reality of his life, giving him opportunity to change. Time, the relevancy of time with humanity is it gives you the space to find out who you are. Excuse me. Time is not something that winds up when someone dies. It doesn't end. Time grants you opportunity to not only find out who you are, but also to enhance mankind's search for self-awareness. So all of us are Hezekiah. All of us have given the opportunity to do what you've read in that number 5. And it comes from the Creator. Now, this is the other part of it as I see it. It doesn't come from the Creator who created us in the beginning. It comes from us, the Creator. You are Elohim. You have this opportunity to do this. The Creator is saying, you are Elohim, Hezekiah. You have the opportunity now to find out who you are, to access the spiritual reality of your essence, as opposed to embracing everything you see with your eyes and everything you hear with your ears. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Okay. Thank you, Pastor. How does that relate? Does it relate to the story I told you guys about the woman who seems to be drowning in life circumstances? And everything she mentioned was extremely important, but she thought the solution was, I need more time.
Well, that's my thought was, and I'm wondering how the women on the phone here feel about this, because as women and all the things and all the responsibilities we have, sometimes we can get lost in all of that. I mean, we have our jobs, take care of our kids, we take care of our home, we do community things, we do church things. So sometimes that can take a toll, and you can lose yourself in all of that, especially if you don't really know yourself from the beginning. So I'm kind of wondering what the other women on the phone feel about that.
I agree with Audrey. I can remember having that experience, and sometimes I still struggle with doing too much and not making time for just me or being quiet and listening to my thoughts. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, Audrey.
And
Good
let me add
morning.
this before you go on. Excuse me, Barbara. The turning toward the wall was the way I see it, because it means to dig a trench to sort of bury yourself. So I see that as a meditation or isolation that he's looking at himself. Okay. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Miss B.
Just to add to what has been said, one of the things that I used to say when I was working and had the kids and going to school and all of that stuff all at the same time was, I need a wife. That's the way I put it, because seemingly men could come to work and do their jobs, and when they went home, they had a wife who was there, who would have had the cooking done, would have had the kids cleaned up, ready for bed, all of that stuff. But it's a matter of prioritizing. That's what I learned, and what's important, and how much time to devote to it, and taking and carving out the time for self. I used to also say my time is not my own. I'd have an appointment book, and meetings would be placed in that appointment book for me, and it was like I didn't have control over my own time, and it was at a point where you had to say, well, wait a minute, what's important here? And part of what I started doing is putting in that appointment book time for me. But this was before I started really meditating and trying to carve out time for knowing who I was spiritually. So I understand what's being said from the broader perspective of, I feel like I'm not in control. That's what that's saying. I feel like I'm not in control. I feel the lady is saying, I feel like I'm not in control. Everything that I do is an expectation of somebody else on me. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. I also heard the word discipline in your explanation. When you talk about setting meetings and putting things in there and time for this and time for that, being disciplined enough to stick to that schedule and not allowing someone to press you in if this is what you set aside this time for.
Correct. That was the beginning of trying to regain me.
Yeah. So part of what we're saying, and part of what I heard Pastor describe anyway, is Hezekiah, and if that is all of us, Hezekiah has an opportunity to meditate, to see himself, to get inside and see who he truly is, and not just know that I'm the king and I'm busy doing stuff, but to see the realness of who I am as a human, and how I fit into all this, or make all of this fit into me. It's kind of what I was hearing.
I believe that based upon what Barbara said in my experiences, the roles were taken, the opportunity rather, to manage your own time, especially females. It came when others were allowed to set what you were going to do, meaning that the male society says that it's the woman's responsibility to cook, it's the woman's responsibility to wash, take care of the children and all these other things in the household chores. That in itself is where the control of the time for females came from. Men telling them what they were responsible for. Now, this is the kicker. Men did not do that generally. It was reinforced by the church. Everything a man desires is reinforced by the church, especially when it comes to a female. So you get in the church, and the male in the pulpit is the one who is the intermediary between you and the Creator. And as that intermediary between you and the Creator, you develop respect for that position, if not that particular person, from an early age. And from an early age, you begin to acquiesce to what you hear coming from the pulpit, because subconsciously you see it as a message from God. And as a result of that, the male is the one who begins to control not only your time, but you, without you really even thinking about being controlled. The church has played a very detrimental role in the life of humanity, or in the life of femininity above everything else. This has never applied to the European woman. If you think about it, the European woman up to recently has always had this African woman taking care of her children, taking care of her household. And those who have means to this day have nannies, have people taking care of their household. This was applicable to the African woman. And this drove a wedge between that African male and female, because she was frustrated but silent about it. And he was dominant and open about it because of his expectations of her. Excuse me. So what I'm saying in essence is this: it was foreign to us, it was uncomfortable to us, and listening at what Barb said in terms of having to pencil in time for herself, then it was never intended by our Creator for that to be. That is not a partnership. That is not even a relationship. That is dominance, period. And the servant becomes the wife. And at some point, we have to really address it for what it is. And that is the wife, the female being a servant. And to this day, there are men who harp on the idea of the woman not cooking. If you are a male and you can't cook, that's your problem. What happens if the female is sick? What happens if the female also has a job just like you? Why is it that she has to come home and do that? Because the church told her to. The European mind think like that because the church is not something that grew out of the bosom of African spirituality. The church is something that grew out of the mindset of a European for the express purpose of justifying control and superiority over everyone and everything. We think this, not today, but probably tomorrow if I'm able to be on. I think I will, even though I might not be able to stay on until we finish today. If you think of what I want to talk about is the difference between the African mindset when it comes to spirituality and religion itself. And I know that we have mentioned those things, but I want to delve a little deeper into them because I do believe that all of the questions that we have, whether it be about what time is, the time that's, as Audrey raised about females and asked for a response from females, the response that she received, the whole idea of why men explode when you talk about, especially African men, when you talk about the power of femininity and how femininity has been stifled. I also want to talk about the misconception that our Creator is a He. And to me, as I see it, the God is femininity. It is not masculinity. Because if the God gives life, then where does life come from? Yes, masculinity has a hand in it. However, the human came from a womb, which means that the God of the human is femininity. And I will delve deeper into that as well. But right now, I'm hoping that we are embracing and understanding what is being said in regards to time and the purpose of time being set in our lives, rather than looking at time the way we have been taught to see it. I'm done. Thank you.
Can I add something that I forgot to say? And this kind of supports what Pastor said in the beginning. The word Hezekiah comes from two words. Heza is Shazak in Hebrew, and it means to grow firm or to grow strong or to be strengthened. The last word that is Yah, that it comes from, and it means so the whole thing is Yah is my strength. Yah is who strengthens me. It is Elohim, it is God who strengthens me. So tie that together to what is being said. It kind of all makes sense, or it helps a whole lot anyway. Hope it makes sense. Thank you.
But strengthen, let's look at that word. Strengthen is not making you strong in a physical way. What we call vulnerability is a strength. To love somebody who hates you is a strength. To desire to be the bearer of the burdens of humanity is a strength. This is not talking about you being strong enough to fight something. It's talking about you being strong enough to overcome those things that becomes distractions to you, those things that, excuse me, those things that distract you from being who you were created to be, and distract you from being functional in the task that has been laid before us. So when we look at this word strength, we can't look at it intellectually. It has to be looked at from a spiritual point of view. Strength intellectually speaks more to dominating or having the power to do that than it does having the power to overcome obstacles and distractions that leave you in a position to reach out to humanity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Also, I think Hezekiah's name was, I mean, his very name was a reminder that he was one with God.
Yeah.
But we don't have that today. We don't have any reminders for us to help us remember or recall that we are one with God. This whole thing with separation of the roles of women and men, the whole thing was created to create dualities so that we think we're separate. You know, I mean, if a woman is so into her so-called role, and her spouse is also into his role, that's a separation. And it doesn't do anything but help create resentments and set you up for you passing on that same kind of thing to your children, because they are watching and observing and seeing what's happening. So we don't have the kind of reminders that tell us that we are one with the Creator, especially when we don't know ourselves and we don't take the time to sort of ponder those kinds of things, and to sort of pursue, well, what is it that I should be doing, or what is it that I need to be doing to find myself? So I think that's a big part of it for us today. We don't have the kind of reminders to show us that we are one with the Creator.
We have ignored them. We have, and that's part of what I want to talk about tomorrow. However, since you mentioned that, one of the major reminders that we have is when we look in the mirror. See,
True, but like in the case of this woman, when she looks in the mirror, she sees mama, she sees spouse, she sees whatever her job is, she sees all the other things she's got to do. She doesn't see herself in relation to the Creator.
and that is the reason, I suppose, I was shown what I was shown about how to see, or how to be reminded that you are God, by looking in the mirror. African, Black, Kemet, Kush, all these things that relate to skin tone has nothing to do with your skin tone. Black is more than a color that we look at. Black is the concept of spirituality. Think about this. It is no coincidence that Black absorbs all colors. White repels all colors, but Black absorbs all colors. If Black absorbs all colors, then that means that Black absorbs everything around it. And why is it that Black absorbs everything around it? It's because everything around Black came from Black. And in order for everything to have emanated from this concept of Black, and I'm not talking about skin tone, for it to have emanated from that, then that must be God, because all life comes from God. Now, the skin tone is simply a reminder that you absorb all things and all things emanated from you. And because of that, you are the giver of life. You are the sustainer of life in this earth. You are God. The role that you have been given is foreign to the African mind. It's foreign to you. And that's what causes the dissension. When you look in that mirror and see who you are, that makes a total difference. When you are reminded by looking at yourself that everything comes from you and everything returns to you. That male looks in that mirror, and what does that male see? The same thing that those kids saw when they said, "Hi, Mom." when the football players used to be, as soon as the camera got on them, they would wave to their mama. What were they seeing? They were seeing the essence of life itself in the earth without even realizing it. There is a knowing that is deep inside of us, and that knowing says to us that femininity is the essence of life in this earth, especially the femininity that is African femininity. And I'm not talking again about skin tone. Skin tone is just a reminder of where you came from and who you are. And if we look at the idea of skin tones, then we will begin to see that the essence of our being, the further you get away from Africa, the less spirit you will find, the less essence of spirituality that you will find, the less you will find of compassion you will find. The further you get away from the African, the concept of being an African, the essence of being that the God in this earth, the further you get away from it, the less spiritual you will find in the groups of people worldwide. And there's much more to that I would like to have opportunity to talk about at a later date, like tomorrow if necessary, if possible, rather. So Audrey, speaking about.
I have a
Sorry.
question.
Does that address what you were speaking about?
Yes.
Does it make sense to you?
Yes, of course.
Everyone else? Questions about that?
I have
think
a
everyone has-
question. Yes, sir. You were talking about the color, or not color, but black, and you talked about what black does. How does that line up with matter?
Dark matter, excuse me, dark matter is also conceptual. Melanin is also conceptual. All of these things that we are talking about are reminders of the essence of life. Keep in mind that there is no life on earth that does not have its genesis in darkness. No life that does not have its genesis in darkness. When it comes out of that darkness, when it leaves that space where the wisdom of life is protected, it is the light that sustains it. So when you talk about dark matter, when you talk about melanin, when you talk about dark anything, the perception that we have been given through religion is that darkness is evil, as opposed to darkness being the source of life and the source of the mind of our Creator. Does that make sense to you, Evan?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
To look at this, to go back to Hezekiah and pull in everything that's been said, Pastor, could this be that what it looks at is the name Yah is my strength, it is who strengthens me? Could it mean that the Assyrians represent those things that the woman was talking about, all those things that close in on us? And if that does not happen, I do not have opportunity to die. So this death, God saying, hey man, you're gonna die, get your house in order, is an awakening that an opportunity that you can see, get a better look at these things that are closing in on you. So without you approaching death, the community does not become one, because the community is what is saved or what is rescued from this ordeal, right? So if you're dealing with the Assyrians, I'm saving the nation, I'm saving my community. I just see a correlation here of what was being said. At least I think I do. And I'm trying to pull it all together, because if none of this happens, it doesn't address the Assyrians until God talks to him about him dying. But that was always there. So
You can, I'm sorry.
go ahead. I'm just trying to talk this out and see it, but
The Assyrians are obstacles. They're the war
Yeah.
within. Everything in the scriptures that speaks of war is the war that's within. These are allegories that talks about us and our essence, or the lack thereof of understanding our essence. The war within, if it were not for it, there would be no functionality. There would be no sense of us being Elohim. In order to be the essence of Elohim, there has to be obstacles that are overcome. The things that we see as obstacles that we overcome is simply opportunities to mold and shape the life of us as well as humanity. These are not problems. These are malleable products that allows us to mold ourselves in accordance to who we are, and to do that for others as well. Counseling is helping someone to see who they are and helping them to mold themselves into who they were created to be. Christian counseling is manipulation to keep you in a place of bondage, so that you don't stray too far away from the fold. I had no intentions of going into this until tomorrow. However, I will deal with some of it today. Since you keep tiptoeing into it, I may as well speak to some of it. This idea of Kemet and blackness, and Kemet means the land of the blacks. Cush means black. Egypt means a cramped space. Cush came from the Twa. The Twa is the human body in the earth. The first people on earth in Africa were called the Twa Mbuti people. So Cush comes from that. Therefore, Cush is a concept more so than it is a color. And when we look at Cush, Cush is the concept out of which the consciousness of the blacks arose, and is called Kemet. And this consciousness of the African that emanated from this concept of black is the light of the world. And the being the light of the world, it is the center of divinity in the earth. It is the space that's been set aside in the earth for light to your earth. So when we talk about
say that part again, please. It is
the space that has been designated by the Creator
okay.
for light to spread throughout the earth.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because if we are looking at this conceptually and historically, of course, we see that the Twa Mbuti people moved, our ancestors moved from southeastern Africa up the coast and begun to spread. And the kingdom of Kush is the areas that they moved through, the blackness, the concept of blackness that they encountered and moved through, meaning that as they moved, the wisdom of existence was exposed to them. And as they began to see the wisdom of existence, they started to see the necessity of making sure that every human understood the wisdom of existence in this earth. And what happened is that Menes saw the necessity of leaving a reminder in the earth as to not only the journey, the conceptual journey of blackness, but also the place of the emanation of light in the earth. Therefore, the hill of Ptah was constructed in a manner that no one can figure out how it was done to this day. And the Nile River moving north moved with the movement of the conceptual understanding of the Kushites. If you look at masonry, or if you look at scriptures, darkness is always in the north. And in masonry, darkness is seen as a bad thing in the north. However, when it moves north, that is the wisdom moving north. And with the Nile being moving north and being the cradle of civilization, that doesn't mean that this is where men originated. Cradle of civilization means that this is the place where men began to see clearly who they are, when humans began to see clearly who they are and the functionality of their being. And because of that, it was called Kemet, the land of the black, which is conceptual. Now, the idea of Egypt, it was necessary because if we had not been in a cramped space, then we would not have moved to make sure that the entire world understood the essence of its existence as well. Now, it is my conceptual belief that the African was able to move all over the different places in this earth in such a manner that did not necessarily require the movement over land or the movement over water, but simply movement as Jesus was on the road to Emmaus. And the next thing, he was back in Jerusalem, meaning that that Jesus was able to move from place to place after the resurrection, to move from place to place without having to be in a chariot or on the back of an animal. He was able to do it simply by desiring to be there. This is the concept of this has nothing to do with Easter at all, but it has everything to do with showing us who we are and what we are capable of. Jesus the story of Jesus reminds us that when you embrace truth to the extent that nothing else matters, then you become the spiritual being that occupies a human body that does not think that is separate from its spirit or from who it is. And with that in mind, let's go back to Kemet. The Kemetan inhabitants were able to move throughout the earth in a spiritual fashion, so that they would be able to bring into existence an understanding of spirituality to everyone on this earth, with them being in a space where they were able to to embrace it for what it is or to make it what it has become. So, and when they made it what it has become, that brought into existence the concept of a religion. Europeans were not the inventor, or they were not the source of religion. The other places where spirituality was being melded with cultural aspects that made it be whatever people wanted it to be was the seed of the beginnings of religion. There is no originality that came out of Europe at all. The only originality that came out of Europe is the desire to fight wars and the greed that led to people being starved. The movement of Kemet spread it, as I said a moment ago, spirituality throughout the earth. Now, what does that mean? Suppose for a moment that the reason we are being shown in relationship to religion, this meaning the aspects of Kemet, suppose that we are being shown this simply because the Creator is saying to us that it is time for us to make known who we are. Would you hold just a moment, please? Just a moment. If you can discuss this, I'll be appreciative.
Any questions, y'all? Comments? I think one of the interesting things he mentioned, and I don't know if you guys heard it or he talked about the concept of time, or that's interesting to me, using the example of Hezekiah and what's in the example of the woman that I spoke of. Can we say that what she is experiencing is the speeding up of time, or time no longer being what am I trying to say? Time no longer being the tool that it once was in our lives, and if we move in a spiritual direction, that time can not only speed up but be eliminated altogether. So that's just one of the things that came to my mind.
Say that again, Ron, please.
I was talking about you mentioned time, and I'm thinking about the concept of time, how the role that it plays. We talk all the time about time speeding up. Can it be eliminated altogether if man recognizes who he is spiritually? And
I'll address that.
Because the example I gave of the young mother and wife, she's frustrated, and she thinks that's part of the problem, is not having enough time. And the things we see that we attempt to address anyway, how does time factor in, and how can that be eliminated? Even on this phone, we look at the journey we've taken from the last couple of years. Things have happened in increments. Is that necessary? Those increments is all I'm saying.
Okay, I'll address that in a moment. Somebody else is about to speak. Was someone
That
else
was
about?
me.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that was me. I was just going to respond to what Ron said. When we know ourselves, I believe that time is not a vehicle that we need to be concerned about. But when we don't know ourselves in terms of our true spiritual essence, it seems that we do need more time instead of it speeding up. It's speeding up. It's just a manifestation of our allowing physicality and material things to be placed in the space we call time, to the extent that we feel we don't have enough. We allow so many things to be slotted in that we feel like we need more slots to put more things in when we don't understand who we are.
Yeah.
Time will always be in existence. Time is an element that was placed in the earth for the express purpose of interaction between humans and their material bodies. If time leaves the earth, if there's no such thing as time anymore, there will be no need for a human body because everything will be one spiritually. The intent of creation was to bring a physical body into existence that will function from its its true essence, and that's spirituality. The body and interaction between humans is for the express purpose of being a physical manifestation of love and kindness, of compassion and empathy, and all of these things like mercy and forgiveness. These are physical interactions that grants opportunity to be spiritually functional or spiritually dysfunctional. And functionality or spirituality does not separate us from time. If we were going to be able to dispense with time, then there would not be necessary. It would not be necessary for this knowledge, this tree of healing with leaves of healing. This knowledge on a continuous basis would not be necessary. Would you mute your phone, please? The necessity of bringing a healing on a continuous basis immediately is because there will always be those in the earth who needs to be made aware of who they are. This is what I'm making every effort to say, is that the responsibility that was understood based upon the spiritual understanding of Kemet was not completed and was not intended to be completed. The invasion was for the express purpose of scattering the African and bringing it to a place that's called the diaspora. And in the diaspora, the African was given new concepts, and these concepts were concepts that would diminish the self-awareness of the African. And earlier when Audrey was speaking in reference to time and femininity, I made a statement that the church is the one who taught that these concepts that we were given was foreign to our minds. And to show you what I'm talking about, when we go to church, what happens? We call ourselves worshiping, and what we do, we sing songs. We hear the cheerleader in the pulpit admonishing us if we don't do what they think we should do, and glorifying those who do what they want to do simply because they have influence. And we hear a response, I wouldn't have a God that I could make some noise for. And we get a response from that, no different than being on a football grid and saying to the crowd, the cheerleader saying, make some noise. There's no difference than that. Now, take that and transport it to your home. When you're at home and you're communing with God, you don't run up and down the aisles. You don't sing songs that have no scriptural basis. You don't You don't stand on your feet and make some noise for the Lord. You don't say, God is good all the time. You don't do things like that. You commune within yourself. Yet in those settings, you've been trained to respond to the cheerleader in the pulpit and to acquiesce to the doctrines that you have been indoctrinated with. These classes, when you become a member of a church, you go through these training classes. These are classes of indoctrination. You don't do that when you're at home communing with God. Therefore, this idea of worship is more than surrendering. It's surrendering to what? It's surrender. Hear me well. It's surrendering to who you are. You don't surrender to the God that was created for you. If you think about it in relationship to what I just said, the God that has been created for you demands that you acquiesce to the cheerleader in the pulpit and that you embrace the intellectual theories of religion as opposed to the illogical reality of spirituality. When you are home, you embrace the reality of spirituality as opposed to the intellectual tenets of religion itself. So when we see this and embrace this, that is when we begin to see that time, say things rather, like time is speeding up. And to us as humans, it is speeding up. But to the spirit, it's not speeding up. To the spiritual eye, it is saying that the spiritual essence of our being is being seen more and more in the earth, is being embraced more and more in the earth. And that embracing of our spiritual essence makes it feel like time is speeding up, but it really isn't. What it's doing is bringing us closer to a merger, for lack of actual consciousness, the consciousness of this earth. Excuse me. The earth consciousness of which I speak is the earth consciousness that was projected out of Kemet, as opposed to the religious consciousness that was to us, or force-fed to us by European proponents of religion. So where are we at this moment? We are in the process of seeing with the clarity the essence of the light that we are. Think about it this way. You are always light. It's just not necessary for you to see it all the time. For example, I remember there are those, Charles is one of them, who would see me as light as I did certain things or delivering a message, teaching, whatever. Now, what did they see? They saw the essence of my being. They saw me as being light. And by them seeing me as being light, they were seeing the true essence of my being. Now, that light is present right now, but it's not necessary to look beyond the physicality of my body and see that light. When it is necessary, you will see that. When we get to the place where we are truly embracers of Kemet, then we will have opportunity to see that light and be and reflect that light at will. The whole idea of Kemet, suppose is talking about telling us rather that the things that happened in that area of Kemet was not things that put us in a cramped space. It were things that kept the space from being cramped. Think about this: the flying machines that are on the walls of the temples there in Kemet, the illustrations of light bulbs and the electricity that are on the walls in Kemet. Where did they come from? Kemet, the concept of Kemet and the realization of the human occupying Kemet is an example of the Garden of Eden. It is an example of what the world is supposed to be. And now we are beginning to embrace that light. So we are bringing into the existence in this world what was intended from the beginning. So we are dispensing with this indoctrination called education and embracing this illogical understanding of spirituality and seeing it for what it really is. What is it that the African was doing for all those years if the African was not lifting up Jesus, or if the African was not a quote unquote Christian? What was the African doing all these years? The African was being who it is, and that is spiritual. So in order for the African to truly be Elohim in the earth, there had to be some dysfunction in its life, Garden of Eden, the type of dysfunction in its life. And that dysfunctionality came from a conniver, a sinister being. And that sinister being was represented in the scriptures by a serpent, but that sinister being is the mind of the oppressor. That sinister being is the one who connived and took everything from all people who did not look like it. That sinister being is the true essence of what selfishness looks like. Everything is mine, and I care nothing about anyone who doesn't look like me. That's the sinister being. That was necessary in order for us to be Elohim. This sinister being was totally was a total and is a total example of what it looks like to be spiritually dysfunctional or spiritually inept or devoid of spirit, however you want to choose to say it, for the express purpose of pressuring, creating a cramped space where the most spiritual people on earth would be pushed to a point where they brought spirituality back into the earth in the same way that it existed in Kemet because of that cramped space that they were in. They were grapes. African concept is like grapes being crushed to make wine. The more the grapes are crushed, the more juice you get from them. And that's who we are. And once we recognize that without being ashamed of it, and once we move past the distraction of this BS called racism, simply because we are telling the truth, we are called racist. Once we move past being uncomfortable with that, then we will begin to embrace more and more of the essence of what we were created to be. And then we will begin to see with clearer sight of what Kemet is. And when we see what Kemet is, we will see who we are. Are there any questions or comments about that?
Well, Reb, well, good morning, everyone. I do have a statement, but yet if you want to continue on, yet it really has nothing, well, it may have something to do with what you said, but I want to go back to what you said prior. But if you want to roll, you know, you can keep it there, though.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I need to take this.
One of the things that you have to know about the European through a historical aspect is the European has always wanted to be wealthy or rich. By way of a cable line, our maneuverability or the maneuverability of that time was to be generous or generosity. So one of the things that I implement, I'm not a wealthy person, no, I'm a rich person. Because when you say wealthy, you automatically equate that with money and material things. Yet when you say, or when someone say, hey, George is a generous person, you can never associate me with being stingy. If you wealthy, or if a person is wealthy, they can be stingy. If you wealthy, you can be hard to work with. Yet if you're generous, that's different.
George, may I please? I'm not talking about Europeans in the sense of this physical world, because this physical world simply a manifestation of functionality or dysfunctionality. In itself, it is not functionality, neither is it dysfunctionality. It's a station of it. And every manifestation in this earth is a manifestation of what's taking place, meaning that it's what's taking place in the realm that is unseen by the eyes. Now, when I say that's taking place spiritually, please understand, I'm not only talking about the essence of who you are when I say spiritual. I'm also talking about your soul. Your soul cannot be seen with your eyes. Your soul will manifest the spiritual essence of who you were created to be, or your soul will manifest what you are describing as wealth, greed, and selfishness. Now, what I'm making every effort to do is to help us understand that this has nothing to do with the physical being. It has everything to do with manifesting the manifesting spirituality for every being, so that when the soul of one is what we call lost, meaning that it is caught up in the things of this world, the material essence of this world, as opposed to being one with the essence of his spiritual essence, being one with the essence of his spiritual nature. That when the soul is caught up in this material world, all things happen. Greed is a manifestation of it, and murder, rape, are manifestation of greed and selfishness. So if you begin with a manifestation of greed and selfishness, there are other things that are offshoots from that. Racism and Christianity, they are offshoots from greed and selfishness. When you look at the soul in relationship to the essence of who we were created to be, then you would begin to see that this essence begins to recognize what is being manifested and what's being manifested. We are able to see beyond the physical representation of that manifestation. And what happens then is our obligation is to recognize that we are indeed all the love that's in this earth. And because we are recognize that we are that, love covers a multitude of sin, means that all of these entanglements of greed, the entanglement of enslavement, of racism, of Christianity, of Buddhism, of all these other isms, all of these entanglements are covered by us, because love covers them, meaning that love covers them. Hence, love has the power and the desire to disentangle everyone from those things that they are entangled with. Now, there are people who look just like us, who are warmongers. There are people who look just like us, who are greedy. There are people who look just like us, who speak just like Tim Scott speaks and believe as he speaks. Those people too are a manifestation of the same essence that you were talking about, and that I was making reference to in the comparison between the understanding of what transpired and continues to transpire in Kemet, as opposed to what has risen in the mindset that has governed the tainted soul of a portion of humanity. This idea of changing, this idea of death plays into that also, George. And the idea of death that plays into that is that when we look at the scriptures and it talks about Hezekiah and death, or any death, it is not talking about the death that we have been taught. The death that we have been taught is the cessation of the spirit being in this body. But we are told that the day will come when the physical body will be able to reconstitute and it would be able to function in this space as it did once before, but in a more spiritual sense. Now, the death that the scripture speaks of is more than a cessation from life in this body. Death in the scriptures is talking about a failure to embrace or to desire to embrace the essence of your being. Meaning that even if you are on this phone and you are challenged with not believing or accepting or embracing what's being taught, then the question becomes, are you trying to understand with your intellect, or are you embracing would you please mute your phone? Are you embracing it with your intellect or making that attempt? Or are you embracing it because it is the essence of who you are? The things that your mind cannot understand, the things that your mind cannot process, those are the things that resonates with you, which means that your soul understands what's being said and embraces what's being said. It resonates with you. Your mind, and if it resonates and you are unable to explain it or to regurgitate it, it's because your mind is not in a place to be able to process it. So, and that is one of the reasons when some of you guys call me and you have questions, and I say to you, don't ask me the question. Let's wait till we get on the phone, then ask me the question. Why? Because when you ask me the question, there's a different space. I have opportunity at that junction to be more in tune with the energy of everyone who's around me. And simply because you are on Zoom or on the phone, it doesn't mean that you're not in my presence. I have opportunity to draw from that presence, and I'm able to see even clearer the answers to your question or the responses to your questions. So right now, my response to what you raised is not just to you, George, it's to everyone on this phone. Why? Because if it were not necessary for me to address this or for someone to address this, then you would not have brought it up. Nothing is done haphazardly in our lives. We just see it as being out of character, or we see it as being, where did that come from? That's haphazard. No, it's not. Be still and know that I am Elohim. And when you be still and know that you're Elohim, it means sit down, shut up, and soothe your mind, and then know who you are, and you will begin to respond to these things that you call problem, to these things that you call haphazard events in your life. You will begin to respond to them differently. However, if we try to process them with our minds, we end up in the same boat that we've always been in. Why? Because our minds have been manipulated for centuries. And it is time for us to cease depending on our mind and depend on our essence. And our essence is in the process of retraining our minds so that our minds will process in a spiritual manner. What is this saying? It is saying that the more we embrace the essence of the light of Kemet, the more we bring our mind in line with our soul, with our essence of being, so that the mind gets to a place where it is renewed. The mind is not renewed because you wake up one morning and pray for it to be renewed, or because somebody lay hands on you. The mind becomes renewed because you begin to recognize the divinity of your soul. And when you recognize the divinity of your soul, you can no longer submit to a God that was created by Christianity or some other religion. When you realize that your mind is renewed by the divinity of your soul, then you realize that your mind becomes a divine presence in the earth. But until then, we have to be extremely cautious as to how we process things, because we have been trained to do it logically. We have been trained to do it through our education, as opposed to doing it by virtue of what resonates deeply with us. I certainly hope that that helps you to see that we are far beyond or responding to someone who wants to be wealthy or responding to someone who is greedy. We're not responding to anyone or any group of people. What we are responding to is the light that we are being shown. And our response to that light automatically moves us to a place where the distractions, like being called a nigger, the distractions of being cursed out, the distractions of being called racist, all these distractions are no more. We don't respond to them. We will only respond to the light. So if someone is greedy, that's them, they are greedy. And our response to the light says that righteousness will prevail with them as it does with us. The moment that their soul recognize that it is divine and they allow the soul to speak that divinity about the mind, that's when change comes. But as long as that mind is focused on Christianity, the change never comes, because religion will never replace spirituality. Religion will never be able to dictate to your spirit. Religion dictates to your soul. And when you live from your soul based upon religious teachings, it is then that you are dead. You are dead to who you are, and you are blind to everything that Kemet is trying to show you. Does that help you, George?
Well, Reb, you said a lot there, and I'm pretty sure it will help me when I'm going down the road and listen back to the lesson. It's just one of the things, Reb, that I notice about generous people is that they have a certain degree of empathy. And
But they
empathy
don't.
is the one thing.
George, no. Please don't do that. Because I know men who are generous, but they are generous because of tax breaks. They are generous because of politics. They are generous because it's going to help them. They're not generous because of their nature. People, the most generous people on earth are the poorest people.
Reb,
let me finish.
okay then, Reb, I'll get with you at another time. But I understand what you're saying, though.
Okay, but the generosity is not a measurement for spirituality. Not at all. There are no measurements for spirituality in this earth. Either you are spiritual, and by you being who you were created to be, it is expressed by the way you live your life, by the way you speak, by the way you interact with others. If you are generous and because you have money, then your interaction with people is different. Because what you found, please, because the generosity of a billionaire is reflected in whether or not that billionaire is using its billions that it doesn't really need to enhance the lives of people worldwide, as opposed to sucking the financial life out of them worldwide. If billionaires were making sure that everyone had health care, if billionaires were making sure that everyone was able to involve themselves in feeding everyone who is hungry and making sure there are no homeless people, that's a different ballgame. If they are doing it because they say that I was created and brought into this earth for this, that is the example of Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa showed the world what billionaire looks like, what it looks like in relationship to the people, and not in relationship to the largest yacht on the ocean or the largest house or the $1 billion that you give away and you got 900 other $1 billion, or you got $100 billion left after you give away that one. That's not Messa Musa at all. Messa Musa is about a continuous giving for the benefit of the whole of humanity. That's the spiritual message out of Kemet when it comes to resources. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Good morning, Pastor, and everyone. I just wanted to give thought to what you're saying and what George had said. But is there a correlation, when we talk about rich in spirit, in reference to what you're saying? Because as you say, again, when we hear the word poor, we think that people who are poor are not necessarily rich in spirits, which they are. But I'm just trying to, understand it even more clearer, that you don't have to be wealthy to be rich in spirit. Is that what you're saying, or does that have some relationship in what you're speaking about? That's my question.
That's the meter or your brother, Mr. George?
That's to Pastor Richard.
Rich in spirit speaks to being wealthy, but the wealth of the spirit is self-awareness and what you do with it. Poor in spirit is when you don't understand who you are and you're struggling with that. We lived our lives as being spiritually poor, and we struggle. And struggle doesn't mean you don't have enough money. Struggle also means you struggle with who you are, your identity. So when we talk about being spiritually wealthy, we are talking about where we are right now. I am spiritually wealthy, which means that I have a greater wealth than anyone, even if they have $1 trillion, I have a greater wealth than they do. Because when you are spiritually wealthy, your primary focus is to make sure that humanity is able to feed from you. In other words, when you're spiritual, you're not only the table, you're the food on the table, and you are the chairs around the table, and you are one with those who eat from the table. You are everything that they need, and that is the reason when you are spiritually wealthy, you are I am. I am everything you need me to be when you need it. Does that make sense, George?
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions about that?
I got a question, but it goes back to your time comment, if no one else.
Can I speak on what George just stated, Pastor Jay?
Let's see.
Was about the spiritual, poor people being spiritually poor.
Wait a minute, please. Essie.
Okay.
Yes.
Would you hold until Evelyn asks a question directly related to this?
No problem. No problem.
Okay, go ahead, Evelyn.
Okay. I was reading and they were saying in the poor areas are more spiritual than people who do not. And we
say
look
that again, you broke up.
Okay, I have to move across the room.
Okay.
I was reading where it says that poor people who live like in Section 8 or in poor areas, they are more spiritual than people who don't. And we have a tendency of frowning on them, thinking that they're lower class people when really we all are one. But is that true to what you said, George, or the question that you asked?
Are you
George Phillips?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Okay.
I think
you were talking about.
Evelyn, I think that's more a response to what I said to George.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When I responded to his question. People who live in Section 8, they are thought of being poor, or they are thought of being lower class. I put that in quotations, of course. They are viewed that way by Christianity. Christianity will go to the Section 8 areas of the city to evangelize, but they will not go to the mansions to evangelize. That's a mindset of Christianity. And when you say they are more spiritual, they are more Christian, searching for spirituality. If you talk to people, especially people of color, we believe in Christianity more than the ones who taught us Christianity. And spirituality is not about you, I trust God. It's not about that. Spirituality is about you knowing who you are first. And whether you are wealthy in terms of this world finances, or whether you are dirt poor in terms of the world finances, you can be a Christian either way and everything in between, and not know who you are. Your financial status in this earth does not determine your spirituality in this earth. It is you who determines that. If you living in Section 8 and you waiting on Jesus to change the way where you are, then you are under the guidance of a God that does not exist. If you are realizing that it is not Jesus, it is not the God that you've been taught about, it is the spiritual essence of you, who you are, based upon the spiritual essence of the universe, that makes all the difference in the world. Does that help you, Evelyn?
It does, but I find more women, the men are more honest and more, they'll just tell you how they feel about life in general. And we as women, we are absorbers, we are receivers, we do. I remember when I was in the religious setting, and I'm still there in certain ways, but it's more of us that accept the fact that there was a white Jesus and a white God. So yeah, I just find that the males are more truthful. They just speak from the heart. And that's why I think they label the lower class, so to speak, less than anybody else. That's all I'm saying.
Men, honestly, Evelyn, men are bigger liars. If men were speaking from the heart, they wouldn't be standing in that pulpit preaching about a God that doesn't exist.
I'm talking about those in Section 8 section.
Okay.
I mean, not those who we look at in a lower, those who live.
Got you.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I ain't talking about the preachers. I'm talking
Okay.
about those people who live in the areas, even around here. That's what I'm talking about.
People who live, you're talking about people who live in housing projects or Section 8. These people cannot be painted with a brush any more than we can. Because, quite frankly, males who live in those areas are not open to change. They have not been reared to be spiritual at all, and they have been reared to survive. And the survival is based on what it takes at that moment. Whether it is telling the truth or a lie, it doesn't matter. It's about survival. The same thing is with a female. So I hasten to say that telling the truth about how you feel about life cannot be attributed to one gender. And why do I say that? Because if the truth of how you feel about life was being told by men, men will recognize that they are the problem. Yet, men who don't recognize that are doing everything they can to keep females in a subservient position. Men dominate in those areas primarily. And again, everyone can't be painted with the same brush, no matter where you live. However, men are the ones who will be with a woman because they can keep their drugs in her house. Men are the ones who will use anybody they can to make money. Prostitution, doesn't matter, whatever it takes. Women will lie to hold on to a man. Women would take chances of losing their children to be with a man. And that's all because women have been taught that they need a man. They can't make it without a man. A piece of man is better than no man at all. So it's not just one gender, it is both. And the reason it is both is because the mindset has been warped by religion, has been warped by education, and the lack thereof of both. So we live in a society where African males and females, as Audrey stated some time ago, are separated by the roles that have been placed upon us. And that separation has created distrust. And that distrust brings us to the brink of subconsciously being separated, whether we say we are one or not. And it also lends itself to being a user in order to get what you want, in order to survive. And I'm now talking about those that you are referencing, Evelyn, because the ones that you are referencing are no different than the ones who are in church or the ones who live in a quote unquote middle class. It doesn't matter. The same attitude, the same system of beliefs permeate both spaces. So it is, so anyway, the essence of what I'm saying is this: it doesn't matter where you live, it's all the same. It's all the same. Your approach may be different, but the issues you're dealing with and your belief systems are the same. Does that help you, Evan? Or can you see that? Or am I addressing what
yes,
you
sir. You are, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, S, unless there are questions about what Evan said. Essie?
I'm here. Just going back to the time when you were saying that, it's just, is there a spiritual significance between age and time? And thinking about the reconstituted body that you say that we're going to, sort of over time, that's going to become more of a reality for us. But it's also taking us back in time, because if you look at the Old Testament, people live longer, and how these things manifest themselves now seem different, because it's not just cliche. If I look at someone who's 50 right now, they don't look the same as a person who I saw was 50 20 years ago. So is there a spiritual significance between, nobody on this call probably looks their age or sounds their age. There seems to be, we're further ahead and we have time, but then we also have age. So just in reference to that, is there a spiritual significance between the difference of the two?
There is a spiritual significance to that. And the spiritual significance of that may sound simple. When you begin to embrace who you are, your stress level decreases dramatically. You sleep better. The only reason that your stress level rises or remains where it is because you choose not to make the difference that you know you should make in your life. The more that you become spiritual, that simply means that you are embracing the origin of life more than ever before. And that extends life when it is necessary for the benefit of humanity. An example of your conversation about your experience with your grandmother and your grandfather. It was necessary for you to have that experience because it gives you a renewed view of life itself and humanity. And it gives you, without you even knowing it, a subconscious direction that you travel in that will benefit humanity, whether you realize it or not, simply by you embracing the presence and the essence of your ancestors. The idea of not looking the age is because, again, your stress level drops dramatically, and those things which were stresses are not there anymore. The stress level of someone who's trying to live a quote unquote Christian life is off the scale because living a Christian life is impossible. It is impossible to live a life that doesn't exist because that life tells you so many different things and guides you in so many different directions until it becomes the source of confusion. And when you think that you are spiritual and you're shouting and you're crying and you got Jesus in your heart and God guides your footsteps, but yet you have the same things that you're wrestling with, that's because the stress of Christianity has done that to you. You pray and nothing happens, but you lie and say it did change. You pray and the distractions in your life increase, but you lie and say, I'm not the person I was yet last year. No, you're not. You're worse off this year than you were last year because you bring the same things and you bring them to that altar and nothing leaves you because the altar changes nothing. Time becomes less important the more you embrace the essence of reality. And reality is no different than spirituality. Reality is not what we see with our eyes. Reality is what we experience from the divinity that we are. Does that make sense, SC?
Yeah, it does, because as you try to relate to where someone who, in spiritual terms, lived 300 years and what did they accomplish in that time, and it seems like we're actually accomplishing more now in a shorter period of time. If you just look at humanity in general and you look at us from a spiritual standpoint, it just seems like we're not aging, but we're growing and time is passing. But there's just more capabilities there too, even from a mental and physical standpoint. When we look at just over.
No, I'm just saying I agree with that. Go ahead. Yes?
That's all I had. That's all I had to comment.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Longevity is not a measurement of what you have accomplished spiritually. Longevity can be a curse or it can be a blessing. Whether it's a curse or a blessing is dependent upon how diligent you have been about becoming aware of who you are and what journey did you take when you saw who you are. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
People who live 100 years old, they just lived 100 to be 100. That doesn't mean they did anything between their birth date and their date of death. That hash between the date of birth and the date of death that's on the tombstone is an indicator of what you have done. What did you do between that hash during that period? What did you do to enhance humanity? Right now, and this has been my mantra for years, if it takes my death, my leaving this body, to be more effective for the benefit of humanity, then I am ready to exit the body right now. I'm good with that. I have no issues with that whatsoever. My life in this earth is not about me and mine. My life in this earth is about humanity, period. Period. I understand a statement that I made years ago when I first was called into ministry. I said and I'm going to state it the way I stated it then, because I didn't know what I know now. I said, God, I'll do this. But the first time that my kids have to go to school with holes in their shoes or be lacking, I'm gone. I'm done. I'm leaving this and I'm just going to get me a job and do what I do. What I understand about that now is this. God, I'm going to do everything I can for humanity. However, if my kids come up lacking, I'm done with this thing. I have lived true to that, doing everything I could for humanity. And not one time have my kids been lacking in anything. Why? Because when my pursuit is to do everything I can for humanity, my kids are included in humanity also. If it was only about me and mine, then I would be trying to leave a church to Craig, or my family would be running a church. That has never been something that I have allowed or pursued. I purposely disallowed the churches that I served to place my children in places of authority simply because they're my children. That's where you go astray. When you're doing for you and yours as opposed to humanity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I do believe that I am not the only one who's on this call, who has ever been on it. I'm not the only one who feels that way. Because if you were not on the same journey, you would not be here. You would not be here. I've never fought about people taking care of me, meaning that I know that pastorally, the scripture says that the people that I cover are the ones who are my source. And I never argued about my source doing more for me. I never argued about my source not doing. I never argued that at all. That's not my fight. That's not my battle. That's the battle for those who are covered. You deal with it the way you deal with it. And you got consequences or rewards. I'm not concerned with that. What I'm concerned with is, are you hearing with your third ear? Are you, is what's been said resonated? Are you embracing it? I'm not concerned with whether or not you're so greedy or you are so disconnected or you are so selfish or you are so concerned with taking care of you until you omit what you're supposed to, your obligation. I'm not that concerned with that at all because as I've said as long as I've been in this thing, I've always said that that's between you and God. So what I am saying is that if you can live with that, so can I. So the primary focus that I have had, I hope to have infused it into you. Take care of your responsibilities, but at the same time, be assured that your source is not what you have in the bank. Your source is knowing who you are. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
That's how I live my life. And living a life like that, the Creator has been there for me and mine, as well as you and yours. No matter how much I give, it doesn't deplete. Why? I don't know exactly how it happens, but I live by giving. Do you? Those are the kinds of things that's important that we deal with. There are things in our lives that are spiritual that we don't want to talk about. And I have been reluctant to talk about these things in relationship to me because people have a way of making excuses. Well, he's all about the money. No, it's not that at all. I'm all about you. The question is what are you all about? And I know that makes sense. Questions or comments? I'm done.
Great discussion. It's a little after
I have
12.
one more comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Pastor, if you will, the media is putting out their fear for April 8th. Yeah. And
Okay.
if you will, can you shed light on April 8th? Give us, you said something last week that was very profound, that was very powerful, and it went out into the universe. And I know it resonated with us. So can you speak a little bit on April 8th? Because I keep seeing stuff. I'm not afraid of anything like that, but I just ask that you please shed light on April 8th. Because they're saying a lot of stuff's supposed to be happening.
Okay. There is no fear. There should never be fear. Whether it's April the 8th or August the 8th, it doesn't matter. Because the spirit man fears nothing. Because the spirit man knows, the spiritual human knows that it is always under the wings of the universe in its protection. The energy of fear is put out there for a reason. The energy of fear is no different than the church making you afraid of going to hell. In this earth, it makes you afraid of living in hell. There are those of us, if you are made afraid by what you see in the news media or what you're reading on YouTube or your news feed or wherever you get your source or wherever your source of information is, you need to leave it alone. Because these things are advertised for the express purpose of making you afraid. This is no different than lynchings that took place. You are lynching someone and putting their heads on a stake along the roadway, that's an advertisement of fear. This is what happens to you if you choose to walk the right path. That's no different. I grew up with my grandmama telling me, don't be afraid to say what you know is right. If they kill you, they can't eat you. There should always be something you're willing to die for. All I'm saying is this. I'm willing to die on this hill that I stand on now. I'm willing to die on the hill of Patah. The elevation of Patah, I'm willing to die there. If I am willing to die there, that means that I'm living there. And if I'm living there, there is nothing for me to fear. We have all kind of quacks on YouTube and on these social outlets. And they will sprinkle it with a little bit of truth. And it confuses people. And that's because you choose to be confused. If you truly believe that what you are receiving is an understanding of who you are, if it's truly resonating with you, then you know what you are hearing is not right. Let me tell you what I'm saying. You don't need me to hear from God. You don't need the teachers to hear from God. All we are doing is expressing to you who you are as we express it to ourselves. That's our purpose. You always hear from God. That still small voice that whispers to you, policeman down the road, that still small voice that tells you, you should not do this. That's the Creator speaking to you. You don't need me to hear that. You've heard it all in your life, but you have ignored it. So when you are reading these things, when you are hearing these things, there is something that says to you, this doesn't make sense. And simply because it doesn't make sense, that is a reason for you to discard it. It's not resonating with you. It's making you uncomfortable. So why are you embracing it? Leave it alone. We are the only people who do what we are doing. And you may say it's arrogant. I don't give it, I don't care whether you think it's arrogant or not. It doesn't matter what you think. What matters is what we know. Why us? Why not us? Why does it always have to be someone else? Why not us? We are in the womb of hate worldwide, South Carolina. Why not us? We're products of this. Why not us? We've lived it, we've seen it. Why not us? We can listen at the vernacular as it changes and hear the things that we have put in the macro. And it does, let me just say it in plain English. I don't give a damn about what people say about us being arrogant or what people say about this doesn't make sense. I know what I see. I know what I'm experiencing. I know what I know. And I know who I know. And I don't see anyone doing what we do. So if you feel like you need to take the words of someone who you're not comfortable with, who you don't know, who you not have experiences with. Do that. That's your right. But don't expect us to agree with it simply because somebody else said it. Don't expect us to agree with it simply because a Caucasian wrote it. Don't expect us to agree with it simply because it sounds profound, because someone has extended vocabulary or a presentation that sounds good. It does not matter. What matters is the content. What matters is what resonates with you. There is no reason for you to fear anything. The covering has not changed. Just as Jesus said, "Oh, how I have longed to spread my wings and take under my wings Israel as a hen takes her chicks under her wing," meaning that, oh, I have longed to protect you from the onslaught of those who seek to destroy you with fear or seek to destroy your body with you believing that you are being destroyed. I don't long anymore to do that for you. I do it. That's who I am. That's the essence of me. And that is the reason I can say to you, don't worry, I got it. And you say, but you have your plate full. Yes, my plate is full. Why don't you take an opportunity to eat from it? Yes, my plate is full. Yes, my heart cries. Yes, I feel what I feel because of what I'm dealing with. But I'm not afraid of it. It does not detract from what I am here to do. This thing that I have to contend with, it's okay. The Creator knew from the beginning that this was going to be what it is. And you say, change it. You have all that power, change it. Regardless of how much power you have, we must remember something. The decision about what happens in these bodies is made at a place outside of the space of our minds. When Jesus went to the cross, this is an allegory telling us simply because you're faithful to what you teach, to what you believe, it doesn't mean you're not going to suffer. The suffering the suffering is things sometimes that we have to deal with in order for resurrection to take place. It hurts. But I'm good with that. I really am. Have I chosen for it to be this way? Do I want it to be this way? No, I don't. But it is. So don't fear anything, regardless of what you have to face. Look in the mirror and be reminded of who you are as opposed to what you're going through. Thank you. And I certainly hope, Evelyn, that this addresses what you were raising.
Thank you. And I'll say thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. This is a great place to kind of pause and breathe a little bit on what we've learned today, where we are anyway, okay? Love it, love it, love it. Have any questions or comments, please send a text or be prepared to address it tomorrow, okay? Thanks again. I hope everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will see you at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, family.
Thanks, everyone.